Okay, so today we're diving into eating well without emptying your wallet. We've got two really cool guides for this.
Two guides is ambitious.
It is a lot, right?
Yeah.
But I think we can do it. So we've got Good Food on a Tight Budget, which is from the Environmental Working Group, that's the EWG over in the US, and then Healthy Eating on a Budget from St. George's Healthcare in the UK.
Okay, so a nice global perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the best part is they both agree healthy eating doesn't have to break the bank.
That is reassuring. What I find interesting is how both guides really emphasize that it's not just about what you buy, but like how you approach your shopping.
Yeah, they're like giving you a game plan.
Yeah, a strategy guide for the grocery store.
Totally. Like EWG even suggests texting your address to this number, 415-889-8650, to find nearby SMP accepting stores.
Wow. Tech-savvy budgeting. I love it.
Right. Okay, so less overwhelm, more empowerment. And both of these guides are packed with tips.
They're very thorough.
They really are.
Yeah.
So let's start with everybody's favorite, fruits and veggies.
The colorful stuff our doctors are always telling us to eat more of.
Exactly. And, both guides are really good at emphasizing how affordable fruits and vegetables can actually be.
Especially compared to, like, supplements and things like that.
Oh, for sure. EWG actually compares the cost of a day's worth of produce to a single bus ride.
Okay. That's a really good way to put it into perspective.
Right. It really makes you rethink that daily latte.
Maybe swap out a couple for some fresh fruits and veggies.
Exactly. And speaking of affordability, they both talk about seasonal eating.
Oh, yeah, eating with the seasons.
Yeah. And St. George's even gets really specific, like summer is for peas and berries. Winter is for your cabbage and leeks.
That is specific. I like that, though. It just reminds you to be more in tune with, like, what's naturally available.
Yeah, eat what's fresh and local.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on from produce for now. Let's talk about pantry staples. Both guides are all about whole grains. Brown rice, oats, all the good stuff. But they also warn about the labels.
Oh, yes. Those tricky labels can be deceiving.
Because just because something says whole grain doesn't necessarily mean it is, right?
Right, exactly. Buyer beware. Whole has to be that first ingredient.
Yes, that's what they emphasize. Whole as the first ingredient, otherwise it's just marketing.
Right. Don't fall for it.
And then, this is random, but EWG had this fact that I thought was really cool. You can actually buy seeds with SNA benefits.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Talk about growing your own food, even on a budget.
Right. Even if it's just a little window box, just some fresh herbs or something.
Absolutely.
It can elevate your cooking game. And speaking of budget-friendly protein, both guides are huge fans of beans and lentils.
They are nutritional powerhouses. Versatile and budget-friendly.
Yes. And EWG has a bunch of recipes using them. One that caught my eye was a crunchy peanut slaw.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
And a Chinese veggie and rice dish. And then if you are craving something a little heartier, St. George's recommends a pressure cooker.
Oh, the pressure cooker. Such an underrated kitchen tool.
Especially for those tougher cuts of meat. Makes them nice and tender.
And it saves energy, saves time.
It does it all.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to protein and dairy. Okay, you ready for this? This completely blew my mind. St. George's says that goat meat is the most eaten meat globally.
Goat. Really? So you don't see a lot of goat meat recipes in, like, the mainstream health world, so that's pretty cool.
It's definitely not your average chicken dinner.
Yep.
But they do have tips for those of us sticking with chicken and turkey, too. Especially on a budget.
Yeah, they definitely want to help people stretch their dollar.
For sure. Now, one thing they're both a little cautious about is processed meats.
Yeah, and rightfully so. The high salt content and just a lot of additives and things in a lot of those processed meats.
And EWG specifically recommends canned salmon as a good budget-friendly protein option.
Good to know.
Yeah. Oh, and this is another random one, but I love this. EWG suggests freezing cheese when it starts to go bad because it melts perfectly later.
That is a great tip. I do that all the time.
It's a lifesaver.
It really is. No cheese left behind.
Exactly.
It's all about being resourceful, right?
Totally.
Speaking of being resourceful, let's talk about those cooking fats, those pantry staples. EWG actually has a really handy list of healthy oils in their guide.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they even mark which ones are most likely to be GMO-free, even if they don't have that organic label.
That is super helpful, especially for people who are being mindful of that kind of stuff, but maybe don't have the budget to go all organic all the time.
Right. Exactly.
It makes it way more accessible.
And, both guides are on the same page about this. Minimize that added sugar. Minimize those unhealthy fats. Read your labels.
Oh, absolutely.
Read those labels carefully.
St. George's puts it very simply. Drink tap water.
Yes.
It's not full of sugar, and it's free.
Why spend the money?
Exactly.
It's free.
Sometimes the most obvious advice is the best advice.
Right. And if you want to make things even easier for yourself in the kitchen, EWG suggests DIY cooking spray.
Oh, yeah.
Just get your oil, get a spray bottle.
So smart.
Portion control. Cost effective.
And eco-friendly.
There you go.
It's a triple whammy.
Triple whammy.
Okay, before we move on to like the final stretch here, is there anything else from what we've talked about so far that really stood out to you?
You know, it's interesting. I think beyond the specifics, what both of these guides do really well is they highlight that eating well on a budget, it's not just about like being thrifty with your grocery list. It's about your mindset too.
It's about resourcefulness.
Resourcefulness, being open to new things.
Totally.
Being a little creative in the kitchen.
It's about taking back control. Right?
Exactly. And on that note, I think both guides spend a good amount of time talking about meal planning.
Yes. St. George's has this great line. It says, avoid shopping when you're hungry.
Oh, the cardinal rule.
Because we've all been there.
Yeah.
You end up with a cart full of things you don't need.
You walk in for like milk and eggs and you come out with a whole bunch of stuff you weren't planning on.
Exactly. Plan a list. Those are key.
It makes such a big difference.
And then they both have, of course, lots of creative ideas for using leftovers,
I love that.
which is so important.
It's amazing what you can do with like those overripe bananas that are just sitting on the counter.
Smoothies, my go-to.
Smoothie banana bread.
Yeah.
So many options.
But I do think even with the best planning, food labels can be really tricky to navigate.
They're like a foreign language sometimes.
They really are.
All those percentages and daily values, and it can get very confusing.
And they both do a good job of like breaking it down and making it more accessible.
Absolutely. Demystifying it a bit so you can make those informed choices.
Exactly. And I also appreciate that they both emphasize that you don't need to go to Whole Foods every week to eat healthy.
You don't need to spend a fortune. Right.
Exactly. There are deals to be found if you know where to look.
Be a savvy shopper, no matter your budget.
Yes,
And it often goes hand in hand with reducing food waste, too.
absolutely. Speaking of small changes, big impact. If there was one thing that listeners could take away from this whole conversation and apply to their lives right away, what would you say that would be?
Ooh, that's a good one. You know, I think it's such a simple thing, but being more mindful of portion sizes.
Portion control.
Yeah.
It's so easy to overlook, but it makes a huge difference.
It really does. And I love that both guides actually have those little visuals, you know, showing what a serving size should look like.
Yes, because sometimes you think you're eating a normal amount.
Exactly. And then you see that visual and you're like, oh, okay.
Maybe I need to reevaluate.
Exactly.
So helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, but overall, I'm really impressed with both of these guides. They've shown us that eating healthy on a budget, it's not about like deprivation. It's about being smart.
It's about making those informed choices, finding what works for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they give you so many great tips along the way.
Practical tips.
From reading those tricky food labels to really using up those leftovers.
Who knew you could do so much with an overripe banana?
Right. But I think at the end of the day, the most important takeaway from both of these guides is that we have the power. We have the power to make healthy choices no matter our budget.
It's about that mindset shift. You know, you don't need a huge budget to eat well.
You really don't. It's about being resourceful and a little creative.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. 2 guides, 2 different parts of the world, and 1 important message. Healthy eating, delicious eating. On a budget, it's possible.
It's totally doable.
So go forth and conquer those grocery aisles.
Happy cooking.